During these uncertain times, what really should investors be holding right now? Well, our next guest argues that it's gold. Joining me today is E.B. Tucker, author of Why Gold, Why Now? E.B., welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, David.
First off, congratulations on your new book. It came out recently. It's been on the market for less than 2 months, E.B.?
Yeah, about 4 weeks right now. So it's on Amazon and paperback, and also on Audible as an audiobook and Kindle.
And offline, you were telling me you've had great success so far, so congratulations. Tell us about the synopsis of the book. Why Gold, Why Now? What does this title mean?
Well, the subtitle is The War Against Your Wealth and How to Win It. I mean, and the second part of that, how to win it, is really important. I mean, everyone knows kind of something is wrong, and we have to kind of back away and give them a bigger picture of what we're talking about, because all the time you're having me on to talk about where the gold price is going, and usually what I tell you, it ends up happening. And the gold price this year is going to 1,900, which is about another $130 away. But what does that even mean, and what good is that? I mean, the average person works for dollars and sweats and works extra hours and sacrifices today for a better tomorrow in dollars. But all the while, the dollars are becoming less and less valuable. I mean, David, you know what this is. This is a 1 ounce American gold eagle. I mean, we all know what this is. And this is how many $1 bills it takes to buy that gold eagle. Okay, this is $1,800. And what's interesting to me is that this is how many dollars it took to buy that gold eagle in 1925 or 1930, all the way up to 1935. And I think people just don't understand. The ounce of gold didn't change at all over that period of time. But the amount of dollars, went from this many to this many. And I think people need to understand that stack of dollars is going to continue growing and growing and growing. I mean, we'll put another 100 on it when the gold price goes up. And if your wealth is held in dollars, you're earning dollars at work, you're saving dollars, you plan on retiring, your wealth advisor says you need this number of dollars to retire. Okay, great, I'll go get those dollars. But all the while, the dollars are becoming less valuable. That's what we're trying to share with people, is now's the time to think about that, not 10 years from now.
I think opponents of gold have argued two main points. One, which is that gold bars and coins, even coins, are not very transportable. They're not very portable. Nobody goes to the grocery, and as a form of payment, they're not widely used right now. Nobody goes to the grocery store and buys sandwiches with gold coins. And the second point that they've made is that the value of a metal or any object that's determined by just mankind at large is quite arbitrary. What's stopping the governments to say, hey, gold doesn't have any value today? Or what's stopping investors from all of a sudden saying, hey, you know what, Bitcoin I think has a lot more value, let's all go buy Bitcoin, or just assigning value to some other seemingly equally arbitrary asset? What do you say to those arguments, EB?
It's absolutely possible. I mean, you could certainly see something else emerge. I haven't stumbled on that something yet. I mean, if I do, then the next book would be why that new thing, why now? We would delve into that. Gold's been around for thousands of years. It doesn't decay. You can melt it down. You can make teeth out of it. You can put it into your shoe and walk across the border and get to the other side and sell it. Bitcoin requires a network to operate on. I mean, Bitcoin has a lot of great features, but what we're talking about is hold in your hand real gold, which doesn't decay, which has limited supply, which is very hard to mine, which is fewer and fewer ounces are coming out of the ground every year, versus governments that are spending $10 to $12 trillion to try to stabilize from a virus situation, that nobody saw coming. And what you see during that is there's no limit to what they can do. And so you got to have something to protect yourself against the government. If you can find something better than gold, send me a private message, because I want to know about it.
All right. Now, in one of the chapters, you have argued that wealth preservation is not just for billionaires; it's for everybody. And I think that that message could resonate with a lot of people now, since the recession and employment has gone up, savings rates has gone up. A lot of people are struggling to make ends meet. What would you say to the middle-class American who is really uncertain about the future right now?
Well, don't mistake wealthy and rich. Don't conflate the two terms. Wealthy, I mean, if you spend if you spend $1 less than you earn, that extra $1 is part of your wealth, and each dollar adds, and you build wealth so that you have options. Before I went to college, I had a day job working construction. I delivered pizzas at night. I was very young. I didn't have an education yet. Life was in front of me, and I was working that hard to get out of the situation that I was in at the time. So I was building wealth in order to have options for something to do in the future. So if you're working a basic job and you're only starting on your journey in life, you need to pay attention, because that small amount of money that you save is wealth. And so that wealth is there to give you a better life going forward. That's what we're all doing. Even if we do something we enjoy and we work just for fun, which some of us say that we do, we're still doing that to earn something. And that's something that after what we spend, what's left over is wealth. And that's the secret to having financial independence in life, is to over time building enough of that wealth so that you call the shots. Now, if there's an army coming after your wealth from the other side, you need to pay attention. And that's what we have right now. In the book, we talk about negative interest rates. Well, what is negative interest rates? That means the bank already pays you zero to put your money there. Soon the bank may charge you to put your money there. And people say, now, wait a second. You mean I would have $1,000 in the bank and I would pay the bank $1 every year to keep the money instead of receiving $1 in interest? Absolutely right. And let me go a step further, David, and tell you why that's going to happen. It's because the Fed is running out of ammunition. They have thrown everything they have at this economy. And what happens is, and we can talk about this in a minute, is you get all these unintended consequences where some people benefit and some don't. And next, they're going to say, you, American citizen or Canadian citizen, need to help us stimulate the economy. You're sitting on that savings, and that bank account could be stimulating the economy. And so to get you to pull it out, we're going to charge you interest, and you're going to pull that money out and do something with it. That's coming next.
Let's go back to the subtext of your book here, the war against your wealth and how to win it. Who's waging this war, EB?
Well, you've got a natural force where I'd ask you, David, if we had total control over the financial system and the dollar and all these things, what would we do? And I think if we're honest with ourselves, it might go to our head. It's kind of a lot of power, to be the one that prints the money and controls the money. And that's not just personalizing against the guys that are doing it now. It's all the way back in history. The guys that make the coins have always thought, well, we could make a few more coins. I mean, certainly nobody would really notice. So you've got a natural effect. And that's the appeal of gold and silver over time, is that it's been called sound money. It's been the only thing that can't be manipulated. And that's why governments hate it. Now, as you see what's going on right now in the system, you've got what's happening is in a crisis economy like we have now. It's not a capitalist economy. We go from crisis to crisis. Now, in each crisis, the bust gets bigger and the attempted rescue gets bigger. And the politicians and the bankers get to control who lives and who fails, okay? And this is why that's important. You look right now what's happening. The Fed's buying bonds. A lot of these bonds, these corporate bonds and junk bonds, these were floated, and the money from those bonds financed dividends and stock buybacks, okay? So if you and I have a company and we sell bonds and we have a terrible business and we use those bonds to buy our own stock back and to pay dividends, and then the Fed buys our bonds, that's a very sophisticated form of bailout. Now, if another guy who didn't have access to that kind of arrangement did the same thing, he fails. All right. So what you see now in the crisis economy is that every time there's a crisis, people cry out for the government to come to the rescue. The government comes in with trillions of dollars borrowed from tomorrow at 0%, and it gives those trillions of dollars to certain people. Certain people receive the benefit of those trillions of dollars. That is called politicians having the power to decide who they save and who they let fold.
Okay, so the average investor obviously needs to survive this onslaught. Let's take a look at some other notable investors here. Warren Buffett has argued that the investor really shouldn't fight against American capitalism, and what he means by that is that looking at the track record of the S&P 500 over the last 50, 60 years, it's been, if you're a long-term value investor, he argued, there's no better way to preserve your wealth than to put your money in the stock markets and put your faith in American capitalism. Would now be a good time to throw your money into the equities, EB? Or is gold still the best way to do it?
Let's think about this, because Buffett's right about one thing. The U.S. used to be a capitalist system. He's got that right. And when he was growing up, that certainly was the case. And so you were able to ride this post-Bretton Woods wave of growth, and he did a great job of doing that. However, since 2000, gold has outperformed the S&P 500 by about 3-1, and gold has beaten Berkshire Hathaway's A shares. Okay, so I think what's funny is that people are looking at very old texts now. Buffett was onto something. I mean, if you have a controlled monetary policy and the Fed is sitting in the driver's seat and the interest rates are slowly coming down for 40 years, there's not a whole lot of use in owning gold. I mean, because you have a very stable system and you're much better off building a business and selling that stock in the market and kind of growing things that way. But we don't have that anymore. So what we have now is we have a stock market where people that are unemployed are at home, and they used to be watching sports, but there's no sports. And so they're taking their unemployment check and gambling on bankrupt stocks like Hertz, and all these things are happening. This is a market where professionals are not involved and amateurs are running the market. I saw a guy last night that's a friend of mine that was telling me about all the stocks he's in. He doesn't even know what half of them do. I said, well, look, man, maybe you want to take a pause, okay? Because just so you know, most of the pros they don't have both feet in right now, okay? And the reason why I don't have both feet in is because people are bidding up companies that have no fundamental basis under them. This is a time to step back and to assess the overall plan. In the book, I talk about draw a little pie chart of your wealth and look at where everything is. You know, if you're way overweight in stocks, maybe it's time to take a look at that. If you have zero gold, maybe it's time to say, could it really hurt to have 2 or 3% of my portfolio in gold? Could it really hurt? What's that done over the last 20 years? You know what it's done is it's wealth insurance. It's like fire insurance for your house. You don't really want to use it, you know, and you need it before the fire. And so what we have right now is an endless trillions of dollars coming and coming and coming for this economy to just stay afloat, okay? And everybody knows that there's something wrong, and their instincts are right. The question is, what are they going to do about it?
Okay. Now, another chapter that you wrote in the book that stood out to me, I'm just going to read the title here. It says, Politicians Benefit from a Controlled Economy. My first question to you, E.B., is do you think we are currently in a controlled economy?
I do. I think we used to have a capitalist system. Now we have a crisis system. So what happens is the effects from the last injection of money to fix the recession, which, by the way, recessions are very normal. They're like forest fires. They clear out the undergrowth. If you have 5 or 6 operators in the same business, one of them is very weak and makes bad decisions, a recession kind of pulls them out of the economy, and it's just like clearing out the undergrowth of the forest so that it can regrow. So what happens now is we never have that anymore. If you notice, we haven't had a recession since 2002, because the 2002 recession, the Fed stepped in, lowered interest rates to 0, created the housing boom. That created a crisis in 2008. The Fed stepped in with TARP and QE 1, 2, 3, Operation Twist, all of these crazy things. That created the boom of the last decade. And now we had our own version of a crisis in 2020. You notice we don't ever have a recession. It's always a crash and then a giant oversized rescue plan that benefits some and not others. What happens is that when you don't have a capitalist system, is that the power of government expands. Think about this. Now we have a small situation that goes off, crashes the market, tens of trillions of dollars are displaced, government steps in, they have the rescue, not the market. The government has the rescue. So the booms get bigger, the crashes get more violent, and the government comes out of the other side larger. Think about 2008. They came out, Dodd-Frank, all these regulations. Every single time it gets larger and larger and larger. So the reach of the government gets bigger and the power of the government gets bigger. And it's not just with this type of stuff. Look at healthcare is now 20% of GDP in the US. It means 20 cents on every dollar of GDP is medical care. And soon I believe the government will then subsume that under part of its umbrella. Okay, so you used to have a 70% consumer-based US economy. Over time, the size of the government effect is growing and the size of the private sector is shrinking, and each crisis helps that government grow because people turn right to the government to be saved every single time something happens.
Do you think that the prospect of government bailouts during a crisis such as this one is going to fundamentally destroy American capitalism, which is based on the notion of the invisible hand of competition? I mean, why would I as a business try hard and compete with my peers if I know that if I fail, Uncle Sam's just going to give me money?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's the invisible hand is long gone. I mean, it's so invisible, it's not even there. I mean, this is an old idea that we learned about back in school, and we still repeat these things. The 4th of July here in America, land of the free. Well, let me tell you, it's not a free market. I mean, believe me, it's like when you have a PPP loans and Main Street lending programs and PPP LP, and you start naming out this alphabet soup of different programs that are available for all these things. In the book, I tell a story about my friend who's a successful advertising executive, and his accountant said, I want you to hire everyone in your family right now. He said, my family's a bunch of hillbillies. They don't know anything about advertising. He said, doesn't matter. You can get more PPP money. Well, what's the PPP money? Well, that's a Fed thing that they're going to give you this money, and then they're going to make it where you don't have to pay it back. And he's like, well, it just doesn't make any sense. So you can see this already happening right now. And each time there's a crisis, it gets more. Remember in 2008, we had TARP. They always name these things something very clever. A TARP is something you use on a camping trip. It keeps you dry. It's very useful. But TARP was this troubled asset relief program. And then they had TALF. They have all these different names for everything that they come up with. And each program gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And the size of the balance sheet never goes down. I mean, all those measures after 2008 were temporary. Remember, every single one of those things was a temporary relief for some issue that could have been sorted out by the free market. Now, just to get things straight, I'm not arguing that these things should not be happening, because they are happening and they're going to happen more. And so what I'm saying is I'm encouraging people not to say moralistically these things are wrong. Okay, forget about it. This is what's going on, and the trend is going to stay in motion, and it's actually going to pick up steam. So instead of fighting it and being upset about it, what I'm trying to encourage you to do is to have some sort of insurance against what I see as inevitable. And that's why I had to write this book in 23 days during the virus situation, was because this message needs to get out there now before it's too late.
Okay, and finally, gold price is $2,000. A lot of people are talking about this here. Where do you stand?
1900 is the target we're watching. We see it moving there like a magnet. I mean, it hit 1785 this week in the spot market, 1800 the futures, another $100. It's inevitable as far as we can tell. By the end of the year is our call for that. And we think that that's a point everyone should watch, because that takes out the old high. And then we'll come back on and give you an update of where we see it going from there. But that's the first target to watch. And remember, it's nice to own gold when it goes up in price, but the way to really make money is to position in royalty stocks, because what happens is that you get decades of future gold production that's in the ground that requires no operational effort by you to extract. And you've got the benefit of that pulled into today. So I expect royalty stocks to do very, very well. And Metalla is the one I'm involved in as a member of the board of directors and a major shareholder. And I talk about that in the book. I explain the story of how we started the company, the philosophy behind the company, and all the people involved. And I think people can really get an interesting look into how that came together at the end of the book.
EB, thanks for coming on the show today. Appreciate your thoughts.
Thanks, David.
You heard it from Kitco News. I'm David Lynn. Stay tuned for much more content.